Hi, hope you guys are doing well. Today we have three rank holders with us. Now, these three extraordinary students have scored rank in the different levels that are there in the CA course. And I'm going to first give an introduction about these guys. First, I have with me Nayan Parak. Nayan is a management consultant in Boston Consultancy Group. He was All India rank 33 in the May 2010 exam in IPCC and rank 42 in CA final in the May 2013 exam. Second, we have Kushal Raithata, who is also a CS and an MBA. Kushal is working with Amazon as a senior financial analyst, and he scored a CA inter rank of 21. That was earlier called as IPCC. We also have Sonia Shivdasani. She's an associate at Boston Consulting Group, that is BCG, and she scored a CA final rank of 46 and IPC rank of 24. So we have these extraordinary students with us, and we are going to ask some questions based on which the students who are watching this are able to understand in a much clearer and a much specific manner about how to go about with their studies. So let's start. I've divided the questions into four categories, and the first category is about planning. So my first question about that is, how early did you start your classes, and would you recommend the same strategy to the students, or you will ask them to modify a little? So Kushal, what do you have to say about this?
So I did my weekend batch because I used to work at EY, so timing was an issue, and I knew just prior to the exam I would not get sufficient time on a daily basis. So I opted for a weekend batch, but in my opinion, that is something I regret because a lot of things I had to brush up closer to exams. I just had notes completed. So I would suggest if you can do closer to the exam, and that is the time where you're more serious, you can invest that time, and then obviously you have the weekend. So I would suggest a weekend batch closer to the exam is better, and then perhaps you can just do your practical subjects, the subjects which you enjoy, say maybe costing, accounting, that you can do along with your articleship and just keep learning about that.
Correct.
That should help.
Okay. Nayan, what about you?
So even I had opted for the 2-year batch on weekends. So even I was doing my articleship in a Big Four.
Okay.
And like most of the Big Four articles, it would be very difficult for them to attend a morning or an evening batch in a weekday.
Yeah.
That is why the weekend batch really worked very well for me. And towards the last phase of our classes, we used to have weekday classes as well. But by that time, my study leaves has also began.
Okay.
So that weekend batch actually worked very well for me.
Okay. I see. Okay. Nice. What about you, Sonia?
So I had actually joined classes about a year and 4 months ahead of my attempt for 5 subjects, and for 2 subjects about 4 months before my exam.
Okay.
And I would really recommend that 1 and 1.5 year period before the exam is the right time to join, for 2 reasons. One, because if you join way earlier, your retention capacity is limited, so it's not of much use. And secondly, and I strongly recommend this, everybody should really aim for that pseudo break after the IPCC struggle. And I say pseudo because we are obviously doing articleship, so it's not like a real break. But take it easy in that first year because you're anyway going to get into the grind over the next 1.5 years.
I see. Okay. So 2 of them had done 2 years, and Sonia recommends just 1.5 years before the exam and completing in that part. Okay. My next question is about which you can answer in a very short manner, and that is, how many months before the exam did you complete your first reading? So again, Kushal, what do you think?
So honestly, I had this 4 months of leave from EY, and how I'd broken down the 4 months is 120 days. So I had to do first reading and 2 revisions, and that's how I'd broken up. Per subject was coming to 15 days, 15 days again, 8 days, and I still remember that the math because it was sacrosanct and I had to like really abide by it. So it was, I think, 15 days, 8 days, and so 8 days and 7 and 4 and 3 days. Yeah, that's how I'd broken down my studies, and then ISCA taken up as a daily subject, so I could just get more number of days per subject.
What about IPCC? Because of a rank in IPCC, so mainly I'm looking in that area regarding IPCC, about your experience.
Right. I think IPCC was a rigorous 1 year because we had a lot of courses, college, plus studies going on in parallel. So how much ever time you could invest for studies after your classes, that was sufficient. So you don't really plan for a rank or in terms of the number of hours you put in, you just try and give your best and be thorough with the subjects you have. And obviously you pick your core strengths and you play on those strengths, but you cannot afford ignoring a subject.
Okay.
So, and the subjects which you hate, then perhaps you break it up and not just take it together. Maybe do that 1 hour, like ISTA or some other theory subjects. I would do it more like 1 hour a day, etc. So that I don't get bored and able to complete my portion.
It is interesting that you say that after scoring a rank, you have a subject to hate also. So that shows that even rankers can not like some subjects. Okay. Nayan, what do you think? Regarding this part about how many months before did you complete your first reading, or how many months did you take actually to complete your first reading?
So I'll just give a broad-based answer for that. I had 5 months of study leave, and I had broken it down to ensure that I am able to do 2 revisions along with the first reading.
Okay.
So I kept buffer for all the readings. So let's say when I had 2 months for the first reading, I calculated the number of days for each subject, keeping let's say 10-day buffer at the end of that total number of subjects into number of days. So let's say if I had 60 days, I ensured that number of days I allocated 50.
Okay.
The spillover gets accounted for.
Okay. Okay. So there was a buffer, enough buffer kept. Okay. Sonia, what about you?
Yeah.
So I was actually also preparing for another profession. I had just had like 1.5 or 2 months left before the attempt when I was done with the first reading. And in the remaining 2 months, I think I was able to cover only some subjects in terms of a second reading.
Okay. This was in CA final or IPCC?
Yeah, but I guess no, CA final. I'm talking about CA final.
Okay.
I'm saying I did, but I invested a lot more time in the first reading so that knowing that I would not have enough time for a second reading, so the quality of the first read was really good.
Okay, fine. Okay. So the initial reading was done very nicely. Okay. Yeah. My next question is, now this is a elaborate one, and I will not mind if you also answer in an elaborate manner because it's a very crucial question, and that is, how did you deal in the last few months after your coaching was done? And what was your plan and approach? So my first point is regarding the plan and approach. Second is in relation to days allotted for various subjects. Now you can talk about the practical and theory subjects also here. And the number of revisions you had done before the exam for the various subjects. So Sonia, what about you?
So I had 4 months of self-study time left before the exam, and 2 of those months were taken up by classes and completing the first read for some of the pending subjects.
Okay.
Then I just had 2 months left, and although I'm all for overachieving and trying to complete everything well, I did not have the luxury of time for a second read. So I thought that the only way I can get a stellar score is by focusing on my strengths, and that was mainly practical subjects.
Okay.
So I said that I'll spend those 2 months strengthening the practical subjects. But at the same time, every day I read some bit of theory concepts. For example, 10 or standards on auditing a day, or one allied law chapter per day. So what this strategy ensured for me was that I completely strengthened my practical subjects, and also I ensured that the theory subjects didn't get too rusty for me.
Okay.
And I would always keep one practical and some bit of theory every day, no matter what, because so that the monotony would get
be broken.
reduced.
Yeah, correct. Kushal, what about you?
So I agree with Sonia on that point, but you need to balance out subjects, and doing theory all at once, the monotony comes, right? And the retention also reduces. So it's important that you maintain that mix of subjects, and maybe I feel, at least for CA exams, since the portion is quite exhaustive, 2 readings are required in that sense, because first reading, while you like going in depth to a subject, but it's almost been 2 months since you touched the first subject, right? So it's as good as you're reading it once again when you start with your second read. So maybe a second revision overall just sets you up. And I would, one thing which I really think is very important is the second revision should have the exact number of days which you will get maybe for your exam, or maybe your third revision, so that you know how much are you able to really cover in those 2 days, but between the 2 exams. Like for example, for taxation, I had read a lot of books. I used to like the subject, but when it came to the exam day, there was this limited amount of time, and I could not really brush up the other things which I read through the whole year. Things were highlighted, marked, but I could not even touch them.
Okay.
So it's important that you do that, and and that's it, I think.
Okay. What about you, Nayan?
So as I mentioned, I had one reading and two revisions. And the way I went about those is for the first reading, I picked up one subject at a time and I completed it end to end.
Okay.
From the first revision and the second revision, I used to mix up practical and theoretical subjects.
Okay.
The reason for picking up only one subject in the first go is because when we are going through subjects with our classes, we don't realize how voluminous or lengthy those subjects are. Some of those are actually ones which we don't even attend classes for. So we actually have no clue of how lengthy those are.
Mm.
The point is, if you mix up two subjects in the first reading, you will end up taking a lot of time because obviously then you will be doing, let's say, 15 days for two subjects cumulatively. And you won't realize how much portion will be left by 15 days.
Yeah.
If you do take one subject at a time, you know how much portion is left and then you can replan accordingly.
Yes.
So that is why I took one subject in the first reading.
Okay. So that you have a better control over the time and you are able to manage the days properly. That's good. Okay. Excellent.
I think,
Thanks.
sir, I would just like to add something here. So when you're doing your revisions, I think what you need to make sure is in those last few months of self-study leave, don't start anything new which you haven't done before, because that will really mess up all your preparation. Kind of, just strengthen and refer to the same books that you've read while your first read or second read. Don't start something new at that last minute, which will just end up confusing you altogether.
Okay. Okay. So basically, whatever you're done, just trust your notes and then just abide by it and just keep doing it again and again so that whatever you're doing, you're excellent at it. So is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. What about you, Kushal and Nayan? Same strategy, or were you blending between the notes and searching for different notes, or maybe you pick, for example, one book for, let's say, costing or accounts, and you just treat it as a Bhagavad Gita and just go behind it. What about you, Kushal, first?
I think, you can't keep reading new stuff, right? The whole idea behind that first reading is you mark out stuff, you know what is important, and go through that, or maybe make your own notes. And then obviously ICI material, be it like the practice manual, etc. Those are the Bibles. So you need to be thorough with that. But you can't invest more time again doing a PhD on a subject the second time. So it's important you just stick to the notes, and then shorter you need to cover those notes in 2 days during the exam day. Right?
Yeah.
So,
Agreed. Same points.
Same point, is it? Anything to add, Nayan?
Yeah, the only new books you need to refer is one is obviously the RTPs, which come in quite late.
Correct.
And the other one is for recent amendments. I think those are the only two key books which I used to refer after deciding the other books aside. Obviously.
Okay. So basically mainly ICI material which is released late or which they have issued later. Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. My category B now that starts first, we completed planning. Now category B is about the studying style. So my first question in that is, when you did your first reading, what kind of markings did you do in your theory books and practical books for future benefits? So many students have this query and they often ask me regarding the markings, and I give them my perspective, but I want your perspective in relation to what kind of markings were you doing in your textbooks. So Nayan, please, can you start this one?
Yeah. So for most of my subjects, I used to either mark with a pencil or with a marker, whatever is available at that point of time. The other thing that many people recommend, and even I would do so, but I did not adopt it, is keeping a cheat sheet kind of book as a ready referencer for the last day, which is basically saying that after you have completed one specific topic in a subject, you just make out a note of all the key formulas or key pointers from that subject. And that you can use as a ready reference for your revision and the final day preparation.
Okay.
The challenge that you end up facing in this is there are a lot of subjects and a lot of topics that need to be covered. Yeah. And creating that cheat sheet book itself is another task in itself. So if you can do it, great, but not necessary.
Correct. Yeah. It's very true what you're saying. Kushal, what do you think?
Marking stuff, definitely. Then it depends on the subject. For example, audit, it's more about the conceptual knowledge than really remembering a lot of stuff. Or maybe say standards of auditing, etc. You should try it. And I strongly believe, or at least it works for me, that my visual memory is much better than reading, right? So if I've written something on my own or marked out, I remember, okay, this side of the page, this was written, and I'm just able to recollect it better. Similarly, for law, etc., at least art attempt, case laws were very important, right? So then it made sense to make those notes what is given. And similarly for certain other subjects, I think you can take a more approach of understanding what the, say if any act is there, what does section 2, it's basically the definition or meaning section. It gives purpose to the act. Why is the act there? So you can make like a whole storyboard around the whole topic and the subject, right? And then you can just remember the chapter and write it down. Then second time will be fairly easy to brush up that subject.
Okay. Sonia, what about you?
So what I used to do was I'll divide this in practical and theory subjects. For practical subjects, I used to make two types of markings. One was of those sums which I found difficulty in solving on my own the very first time. So I used to mark those as a last day revision sum. And second filter that I would apply was if let's say I do these 20 sums out of the 60 in this one chapter, will I be able to confidently say at the end of the day that I know everything there is to know about this chapter? So one sum per concept and all those sums which I found difficult to solve. These were my practical subjects markings. And in theory subjects, for some of the subjects, just underlining the important points or trying to remember the head points worked for me. But for some other subjects where more detailed notes were required, and I did not have, while making your own notes is the best strategy, like Kushal said, it's easier in your own writing to understand it. While I didn't have the time to do that, the hack that I found for this was that there are tremendous resources on the internet of summary sheets or cheat sheets which people would have already prepared. So what I used to do was for some subjects, download and print out those sheets. And this, I'm stressing enough on this, during the first read itself, keep it beside the material you're referring to during your first sheet. Read the material, and what you find important, try to find it in that sheet. If it's there, well and good. If it's not there, I used to annotate on that very sheet itself. So the advantage of this approach was that when I was actually referring to the revision sheet, it was not something new that I was reading. It was in my own words what I had made marking, so it was easier to relate to as well, and it saved time also.
Okay. Wow. Great advice. I want to ask you one more thing in relation to this point, only just came to my mind, so I thought I'll just ask you. What were you exactly writing in your textbook when you say markings? So what I mean to say is, were you writing the keywords next on the when the words get over, but the book end is not there, but there's some margin space. Yeah. So were you writing some keywords there, or were you just underlining the keywords, or were you writing some code words or some some what you call as mnemonics? Were you writing something like those? So my question in relation to is that. So Nayan, quickly on this, if you can put some light on this, please.
So I was also writing keywords in those margins, right? And I think that's something which most of us tend to follow as well. Correct. Whenever you are reading some specific paragraphs and you feel those are relevant, you also tend to write out the key pointers that you need to remember from it. Because in the last day, you won't be able to read through each and every paragraph, but you might be flipping through pages and you might read those one or two bullet points that you have noted there. That really in hand.
Yeah. Kushal?
Yeah, similar. I think highlighting the key words or a sense of that topic, right? And maybe putting that down, or if there's confusion around what this whole concept is, then maybe briefly either through a chart, tree diagram, or some relation or mnemonics in some cases for certain subjects. I would mention that on the side.
Okay. What about you, Sonia?
So different for different subjects. Like for ISCA, I used to focus on the head points, and I would use mnemonics for those head points. Whereas for other theory subjects like audit and law, where the answers tended to be really long in terms of paragraphs. So even while I was reading the practice manual and one paragraph ran to, let's say, a whole page long, what I used to do was I would think that if I had to paraphrase this entire paragraph in just about 7 or 10 words, what would be those key words that I would use that don't note them in the extra margin space, so that next time when I'm revising, I definitely don't have to read that entire page long of paragraph.
Okay, so basically keywords was the habit that you all inculcated basically, and mentioned it on the margin area. Thanks. Great point. My next question is, while studying, did you study one subject at a time, or did you mix theory and practical subjects? And the next part about this is why. So what was the thought process behind it? Nayan, of course, shared the point that during his first reading, he focused on one subject at a time so that he gets a better day-wise planning. So basically, if he had kept, let's say, 6 days for a subject, so he would exactly come to know whether that subject is getting over on the 6th day end. But whereas he mentioned that if he mixed subjects, then basically cumulatively the number of days would seem larger and you would get more complacent or relaxed because in your mind you have more days to complete these two subjects, right? So anything on this? First, Kushal, anything on this?
Yeah, so I think I did one subject at a time. Only for risk I felt I could not do it at a stretch. So that I incorporated with a daily schedule. Rest, I used to, prefer going in a flow. And then maybe when I'm just doing theory subjects, if I get bored during the day, I either pick up an accounting problem or cost accounting. That was my strategy.
Okay, so just to summarize what Kushal has said, basically he used to focus on one subject at a time, but the days when he was studying theory subjects and if he got bored, then he just blended practical subjects with it just to, just to pass his time and ensure that the practical subjects are also done side by side. Sonia, what about you?
Yeah, so during the first state, obviously I started with one subject a day, but in those last 3-4 months of studying, I made sure that I did more than one in a day just to avoid the monotony. And I used to make, while I had two sorts of plans for this. So I had made a long-term plan of for those entire 4 months on how I will divide between first read, second read, whatever, and which subject I would do when. And the second was a short-term plan where I would more like it was like a laundry list to say that today I will complete 2 chapters in SFM, 10 standards on auditing, whatever. And then I would tick it day wise. And although it's a good point to say that it would stress you that the timelines have elongated if you combine 2 or more subjects. But what the daily list helped me do was, if something was unticked, it kind of stressed me out to say that I will have to complete that on the next day and my plan is already tight. I cannot squeeze in anything extra. So that other list kind of helped me to complete my planned things daily, and I was able to cover more than, sometimes I even did 3 subjects in a day, 3 parts of different subjects in a day.
So basically you create a long plan and also created daily deadlines so that you have to complete that. Otherwise it will act as a buffer on the next day, which you didn't have time for.
Yeah.
Great. What about you, Nayan? Anything to add on these points?
No, I think broadly on the same lines what I mentioned earlier.
Okay.
Keeping just an additional buffer in the days you count for every subject actually helps. So I can give it in writing. No matter how deeply you plan, you will end up exhausting your buffer days for sure.
That is what I think all the CA students have in common, including me, that we all have extended our plans, and so buffer genuinely, it genuinely helps because you never know when you fall ill or the day you're lethargic. So maybe exactly.
What if you're so deep in trouble that you just don't have a buffer period? I went through that.
That is, you're a cornered tiger, no, at that time. So you have to just attack. Nothing, no option.
Yeah. Depends whether you fill the exam form or not.
True.
Yeah.
My next question to you all is, what exactly did you study just one day before each exam that helped you to score a rank? And in this, I would like you to stress on the approach, planning, revision notes that you maintained. This is one question that genuinely as a professor, I get asked a lot. Sir, exam ke ek din pehle kya karna chahiye? Because the students actually don't get an idea about what to study when. And suppose if they have studied from, let's say, that's why I asked in the earlier question, did you study from 2-3 books, or did you just focus on one book and just treat it as the Bhagavad Gita and just went behind it? So you guys, all of you all just said that, okay, one book plus maybe ICI material just to refer some areas. So my question is exactly on those lines, that just one day before the exam, what were you exactly doing? Did you try new areas, or did you just went for the gun and just those specific areas which you focused on? So again, on 3 areas: approach, planning, and revision notes. Nayan, please, on this.
Yeah, so I think one thing which everyone would agree to is last day you really can't touch anything new. That is out of question. The other point is specifically for many subjects, the portion is just to actually cover in one day. 1.5 day for that. But my approach would used to be that I want to cover as much as possible in that 1.5 days so that I have a fresh memory of whatever I have read for. Correct. Obviously, you can't read each and every line, and that is where the notes you make during your first reading and revisions do come in handy a lot. In spite of that, I would really say that if you feel that you are unable to complete the full portion in 1.5 days, then don't be disheartened. We all went through it and we all couldn't really complete the entire portion in those 1.5 days, but the target should be to complete as much as possible.
Correct, yeah.
And there is really nothing that can be left out as this won't be asked in the exam. That approach.
No options at all. Yeah, true. I learned it the hard way, so I can vouch for it that please don't leave anything in option. Kushal, anything on this?
So completely agree with that. Just to add, maybe just seeing the past papers of a few years and attempts and plus the revision test paper just gives you a sense of how important a chapter is. So it's while studying, you should know which chapters are of importance. And yes, for certain subjects, the weightage of different chapters can completely vary, depends on the examiner. But still knowing what chapters are absolutely important. So you should, knock them off the list. And maybe if you take half an hour, 1 hour more on the day one, right after you've come back home, give the exam, you can do that at peace. Then maybe the smaller, less weighted chapters you can quickly brush through in the second morning. That used to be my approach on the exam day. First, focus on all the important chapters, and which I already had a plan before the exam started. That on day one, these are the broad topics in every subject that I would want to complete on day one. Get up next morning and do the other chapters, then practice manual markings, RTP, etc., and head to the exam.
Okay, nice. Sonia, what about you?
So in terms of, firstly, I agree not to touch on anything new at the last day and just reading. I think the most important point here is to have really structured revision notes, and the quality of the notes you've made throughout the year is going to determine how the quality of your study will be on that last final day. And for practical subjects, it was very easy for me because I had made really important or clearly marked out sums for all the chapters, and it was easily doable in that 1.5 day period, so that it was not much of a problem.
Yeah.
For theory subjects, I used to do exactly the opposite of what Kushal mentioned, because after the exam day, you'd come back and I would be really drained and tired. So I would tend to finish off the easier chapters, which I was more confident about, so that the next day I could start with a fresh mind on whatever is more important according to me or more difficult personally for me. Okay. That's how I would focus. And I would definitely recommend going through the RTPs and the mock test papers as well. It's okay if you don't have time to solve it. Just read the questions, think in your mind how you would have gone about answering it, and high level, just read through the answers. That also helps a lot, because a lot of times questions get asked from them. Correct. And that's like a cakewalk then. If you've just recently read it that morning and it comes in the paper, it's a cakewalk.
Yeah, the big bonus. Yeah, true. Very nice. In this, I just wanted to ask you one more thing in relation to the last day part. And my question was, did you all have something called as a last day plan? So just suppose for FM, so after you come after the FR paper, now what exactly do in FM? Were you thinking about it when you left from the exam hall before you reached your home during that time, or did you have a pre-plan in place when you did your previous revision, saying that, okay, I'm going to go through FM in this manner? And did you have a plan like this for each and every paper? So just a quick answer regarding that. Kushal, what do you think?
So I'll give you more the things which I did and which I really like that and which helped me is I had like a stack of books ready for every exam. And yeah, just one thing, I would never talk to anyone outside the examination hall. You're completely cut off from the world. You don't analyze the paper, how it's gone. Just after the exam, put the paper in the bag, straight away head home. That's just one very clear rule. Come back home, be happy of the fact that this exam is done. Take the stack of books which was outside, dump it inside happily, have lunch, sleep it off, and then start afresh with a new subject, right? That helps a lot. And then obviously you have a plan in mind of what or how you'll study that subject. But it's important to completely detach if it helps, not tear the question, but just put it away. And if it works, you can do that also. But yeah, and then just start on a completely fresh note, that new exam, new challenge. And okay.
But did you have a plan in place? So you had the stack of books in place, but exactly what to do, what you will do just on that day, the holiday day and the exam day?
Yeah, so that is where my second reading helped, and I knew how much I could cover in those days. So I had some plan in mind that first day, these are the chapters I'll touch, second day, and then what I'll do on the morning. Mornings usually used to be the practice manual markings, mock papers, and RTP.
Okay, great. What about you, Nayan?
Same as Kushal, I did not really have a written down plan per se, but based on your revisions, you pretty much know that which are the key portions or subjects which are the key topics that you need to brush up on, and which ones are likely to take more time. So you have a broad sense of that, and you just follow that.
Correct. Okay. What about you, Sonia?
I'll be honest here, I did not have a plan for the last day. I would just come home, finish a half kg of a chocolate cake to calm down and stop thinking about newspaper went. And literally half kg cake daily. I'm not even joking. Yeah, and then I would calm down and then just start with the subject. And my attitude was again that cover as much as possible. Although I knew in my heart that I would not be able to complete 100%. But guys, that's really okay because you need to trust the preparation that you've put in throughout the year. And nothing you do or don't do over the last day is going to make much of a difference. So just try to do as much as possible and just have the confidence over your, over your preparation all throughout.
Correct. Very nice about the half kg cake point, because I am pretty sure that whatever advice they take from this session today, students, the one advice they are definitely going to take is that they are going to buy half kg cake every time they come from an exam, because one of the rankers just recommended it. So great. I think you are going to get a Monjini's
Hamper.
No,
hamper
actually,
or a deal soon.
no, actually, it was Theobroma, and initially those guys used to ask me, "Okay, ma'am, cake पे message क्या लिखना है?" And every time I would say like, "नहीं, कुछ मत लिखो, ऐसे ही भेज दो." After the point, every time they got an order from my name on Swiggy, they stopped asking. They knew this girl is crazy. She doesn't need an occasion. She'll just eat the cake right.
No, you could have written best of luck for the next paper, whatever it is, best of luck.
Or the paper that is over. So if FM is over, just eat the FM cake with the happiness that okay, FM is done.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay. This is category B done. That is in relation to the studying style. Thanks for sharing on that. My category C is on tests. So my first point is how many tests did you write, and how was it helpful in your overall score? So first, Kushal.
Honestly, IPCC time, there was not enough time to, because I remember, I think there was SARS as a disease, which had, I think, delayed things, classes, etc. Everything was delayed, so not really given tests or given finals. More practice sounds, but yes, at least for the first exam, since if you're not in the habit of writing, the speed takes a toss, right? And as you proceed with the exam, your speed increases. So it's very important to be in that touch of writing. And practical, yeah, it's important that you keep solving some so that even if you know what you need to do, sometimes people just blank out.
Correct, yeah,
and
true.
So it's very important that you be in that touch. And theory, I think it's okay, but can vary basis, it depends on the individual.
Okay. Nayan, what about you?
So I frankly never opted for any of the test series, and I did not really even practice writing papers for that matter.
Okay.
The reason being, I always felt that I am short on time for revising subjects.
Okay.
And I never really could allocate the time that those test series would have demanded. The other thing that I used to do is for practical subjects, as and when we are going through it, I used to handpick few sums which used to be quite tough, and I used to try and solve them in the first reading or the revision, depending on how I am placed.
Okay.
The other thing is I used to be good at maths, so I never really needed to solve per se to get to an answer. If I could remember the solution, I could solve it in the paper. That's something that came naturally, so that came in quite handy. What I would really recommend for people to ensure that they complete their paper, and this is where this is something that is really important, and I've seen a lot of people not being able to do that, is that you need to mentally allocate time to each and every sum that comes in the paper. So let's say for a 20 mark, for 100 marks, we have 3 hours, which is 180 minutes. So for a 20 mark sum, you practically don't have more than 40 or 45 minutes. Now what tends to happen is the first sum usually takes a lot of time. You are jittery. You need to get a sense of what's happening in the exam. And that's why the first sum ended up taking between 45 minutes to 1 hour. Yeah. But then I used to be very conscious of the time remaining, and I used to cover it up during the next few sums. I used to rush through them as soon as I can, so that I left with, let's say, 5 or 10 minutes to check my paper at the end of the day.
Okay.
So it's very crucial that you ensure you time your paper accordingly.
Correct. Okay. Sonia, what about you?
So I didn't write any tests for CA final except for ISCA. I had absolutely no time. But I would definitely say that it helps in terms of your speed and everything, because on the contrary, during IPCC, I had completed the studies much earlier, much before time, and I had solved some crazy amount of past test papers for all the practical subjects. Like around, you can say I'd solved like 7-8 attempts, last 7-8 attempts papers, like literally just solved it, and it really helped just boosting my confidence and speed as well in the paper. So if you have the time, I would recommend that you do the test, whichever test series, or even if you just read the institute's past papers, it would be good enough. It would be helpful.
Okay.
Even I just recollected that actually I've given ICI ka exam. I think they conduct some mock papers. I think I remember going to tough parade and giving the practical subjects, but it was more of an eye opener, and I realized that my speed was slow, lagging, need to practice more, and because I was not able to complete it. But that was like a good eye opener exercise. ICI does it well.
Interestingly, I was never able to muster up the courage to register for any of the mock test papers. One, because I had not completed the portion in time, and two, because even if I had, I'm one of those people who will easily get disheartened if you get a bad score in the prelims. So I was like, no, there's no way I'm trying this. It's okay. I'll just trust my preparation and go for the main exam.
Correct. Confidence is extremely important. So maybe to maintain that, you might have opted out of it. Okay. Just a quick answer in relation to this. If you would have given the test, I know it would sound a little contradictory, but if you would have given the test, would it have helped you to score a better rank than what you have already scored? Or would you have preferred the status quo wherein saying that, no, like I think it wouldn't have mattered much? Just a quick answer, Nayan.
Status quo.
Status quo. Okay. Kushal?
I think it would have helped me better my score.
Okay. Okay. What about you, Sonia?
I think it would have helped for sure.
Okay. Fine. I'm entering the last category, and that is general. It has the maximum questions, and this covers a variety of areas. So let's look at it. First is, first of all, where did you do your articleship from? And second, would you recommend the same level of the firm for the students? And if so, why? What about you first, Sonia?
So I did my articleship with EY, and it was an amazing learning experience. While choosing between a big four and a mid-sized firm, my thought process was that I have absolutely zero inclination to do audit work. And I was clear that I wanted to specialize in tax, and within tax also I wanted to do only direct tax and not IBP. Okay. So that kind of limited or narrowed down my options enough to say that, look, big four is what I'm looking at. And the second deciding factor was that I felt to have a big four as your first professional experience on your CV really does wonders for you in terms of the opportunities that you're offered later. Correct. And no regrets there. I think it worked well for me. So
yeah. What about you, Kushal?
I agree to what Sonia says. Maybe how people or students can decide what can be basis their future plan, right? If you really plan to start, say, CA firm, or you have, say, an existing practice and want to join that, and depends on the scale of the firm. Maybe working in a mid-sized firm will give you exposure to a lot of things, and as a CA, you are expected to, specialize in multiple areas, direct tax, indirect tax, etc. But if you see yourself staying on the corporate side of things, so I was of the same opinion. My dad is a CA, so I worked with him on a few audits, but I realized that at least audit is not my calling, and tax is something which I like. And then maybe that time I was still open to the idea of joining that, but then yes, being with EY, I would add new skill sets which later on maybe I can, once I join my dad, I can add those existing newer branches to the practice. Okay. That was the thought process, and then you always have that flexibility, right? And then depends what you're inclined towards more. Maybe you can start with the big four. Then if you see maybe your studies is taking a hit, or you want to just work in a mid-size, get exposure to multiple departments before you be restricted to a single department, then you can change in the second year or the third year, and vice versa, right? So you always have that option. Okay. But then you choose based on what you're inclined to.
True. Okay. Nayan, what about you?
So even I had joined a big four. I did my articleship in Deloitte, and like most other people, even I was confused whether to go for a big four or not. I had actually connected with one of my teachers in college, and she strongly recommended going for a big four while I was really hesitant. And I really thank her for that. The few things that come to top of my mind is, firstly, doing your articleship in a big four really instills a lot of professionalism in your approach towards not just work, but everything in life. And that includes studies and everything. Yep. You really need to prioritize your time for the things that matter. And that comes in handy when you're preparing for such a big exam. Correct. The second thing is the tag obviously helps down the line. There's no second thoughts about that. And the other thing that I would like to add is, if possible, I would highly recommend people to opt for industrial training in good corporates if they get an opportunity for that. I've seen a lot of people shy away from that, but it can really open up your mindset and opportunities further after you qualify.
Okay. Okay. Thanks for that. Just to add to this, even I did my articleship in EY tax, and actually Kushal is I know Kushal since my internship days, and I can vouch for that, Kushal was one of the really focused interns at that time also in terms of the work preparation and how to go about the things, and he excelled really well as an intern also at that time in EY tax. I think Sonia was one of my students, so she had joined EY after Kushal and I had left EY after our internship. So excellent exposure, and I think we all the four of us can definitely vouch that Big Four was definitely beneficial for our approach, and in terms of the professionalism and the way we do the work even now, it really adds a lot of value to it. Thanks for to add all these areas here. My next point is now this could have been included in the planning part earlier, but I thought I'll include it here because I just need a small answer, and that is, when you used to sit and plan, for how many days were you planning at once? So should people go and make an elaborate 1 month plan or a 2 months plan, like in detail, day 1 I have to do this much, day 2 I have to do this much, day 3 I have to do this much, or maybe a 3 days plan or 2 days or just 1 day or 1 week? So I'm looking for an answer in those lines. So quick answer, Nayan, what do you think?
So I made my plan overall for a reading as a whole, and I did not break it down into per day. So let's say if I took 2 months for first reading, then I would have divided 7 or 8 days per subject.
Okay.
A subject might have had 1 or 2 days more, but I did not drill down further. I kept some buffer, as I mentioned.
Okay. Achha. What about you, Kushal?
Yeah, so I think it's important to face the reality and see how much time you have at hand, and then maybe chop out smaller plans. And then obviously you keep revising, and it's very important to keep a buffer because you'll always run short of time, and you need to keep that buffer just in case you overshoot the allocated days in any particular subject.
Correct. Okay. Sonia, what about you?
So for those last 4-5 months when you're on your study leave, I think you should definitely have a plan for the whole 4-month or 5-month period. I personally have started it top down. Like I said, okay, now I have 4 months. I have to divide it between whatever 8 subjects. I had allocated whatever 10-15 days per subject. And then, like I had mentioned earlier, I was doing 2 subjects at a time, right? So once I had my 4-month plan in place, I knew that I will be able to complete everything in those 4 months. Now coming down to the smaller plan, if let's say in the first month I was supposed to do SFM and audit, for example, so then at the beginning of that month, I would start making a smaller plan to list down, like I mentioned, my daily list, that these are the 10 things I will do today. So that I used to do at the start of every month when I was picking up 2 new subjects.
Okay. Oh.
So one big plan and then smaller plans.
Smaller areas to be covered. Okay, great. Now, as humans, this next question is based on that. Everyone has low days and high days where you are able to complete a large chunk of the portion that you had already planned for, or maybe when you are unable to complete the portion, maybe you underestimated the amount of time that particular concept would take. So my next question to you is, how did you cope on the days where things were not going as per plan? What was your thought procedure like, and what were you thinking at that time? So Kushal, can you please start on this?
I think you have those bad days, but having one close person to you to vent it out or just discuss on a daily basis, and that used to be my mom, and she was around every day. So being very frank, in fact, in planning also, I used to take her help in, this is how I'm thinking, these many days I have, kind of bifurcating between these subjects. And yeah, so I mean, you have to face the reality that if things are going wrong, but there's always a positive side, and then you somehow manage with the buffer and study more, etc. You'll manage. And obviously your parents will always support you and give you that, boost of encouragement, etc. But I would strongly advise, or depends on people, of discussing with people. It surely disheartens you because people have different styles of studying. There are some, like I will go very thorough with the subject and finish it in say 10 days, and you ask me anything, I'll know it. Maybe someone will finish the same subject in 5 days, but his style of studying is completely different. So never compare with your friends that someone has done 4 revisions, you've done 1 revision, 2 revision. It's purely based on the individual, and that is what you need to focus.
Okay. What about you, Nayan?
So I used to connect with 2 or 3 friends who were also studying at the same time. Not on a very regular basis, but obviously you'll need people to refer for doubts and queries and all that. That used to happen. On my bad days, I would used to reach out to some of them and understand how they are faring. Not in terms of how much revision they have done, but in general, how are they doing? because it helps when someone else is also in the same boat, so you get that mental boost as well. And it's the person and it's not you which is creating this mess. So that helps. And apart from that, on your bad days, so given the vast volume of portion that we are dealing with, it is obvious that you will end up having some of those bad days as well. What I used to do is I used to take a break of some sorts. I used to watch TV. Sometimes I used to just go out, take a walk, come back. So just that, you can refocus your mind towards studies. At times it happens that while you are studying for, let's say, 12 or 15 hours a day, you just end up getting exhausted, and it is really important that you take a break to refresh yourself.
Okay. On the break point, I'll come in the next question. Sonia, what about you?
So I don't know, I had my fair share of flow days, and what kept me going, I guess, was the relentless faith that my parents showed in me every waking minute, even more than I believed in myself. And I think just the thought of having to give the exam again and to go through that whole process all over again used to give me the jitters. And that used to help me get back to reality and start focusing my attention, focusing my energy in the right direction. In fact, I distinctly remember there was this one day when I was so frustrated. I was like, I was just done with this, and I told my parents, this is not what I want to do in life. I don't want to do this, and I'm just quitting right now. And finally my dad was also irritated, and he was like, fine, what is it that you want to do instead? What's your plan? And luckily for me, I did not have a plan. I just knew that ye nahi karna hai, but kya karna hai, I didn't know. So obviously I had no option but to swallow the drama and get back to reality and study. But yeah, I guess just speak to people who bring you up, and or just sleep it off, and next day you'll be better. That helped me.
Correct. Yeah, excellent point. Just to add one point, one incident that happened with me when I was in IPCC. So basically, I had given the ITSM paper, the dreaded ITSM paper. And at that time, I did not have the same love that I had for IT at that time. I love IT now. I'm an ISCA professor, so I know I know things well. But at that time, I used to dread that subject. So basically, after giving that ITSM paper, I'd come home and I was like, oh God, ekdam kharab gaya. I don't know what is going to happen and this and that. And the next exam was advanced accounts. So my dad just motivated me and told me, see, just go for it. Don't worry. Now only one is left. You have already given 6. You remember we had 7 subjects at that time, 7 papers. So he told me you have already given 6 and only 1 is left. So just go for it, and you never know what happens. Luckily, listening to his advice, I just went for the exam, and things worked in my favor, and I cleared my IPCC. So I am pretty sure that parents do play a very big role in terms of our motivation and handling us emotionally during that part, because we are already burdened with a lot of pressure. So thanks for sharing on that. Thanks, Sonia, for sharing the personal experience. My next point to you all is, this again with something students ask me all the time, so I just want your point of view on it. How did you normally utilize your break time? How was it beneficial for you? So if you are taking a break, first of all, for how much span were you studying at once? And then when you used to take a break, first of all, for how many minutes you took a break? And what were you doing in that break? So we'll start with Sonia now.
So I would probably study for like 4 hours at a stretch, and then take an hour-long break. And what I used to do in my break was I used to binge watch shows on Netflix, mostly comedy stuff. And that used to just help calm my nerves and help me get back with more rejuvenation.
No, binge watch, I'm pretty sure that it is just watching and not binge watching, because binge watching would take like hours.
Binge watch. So at least one day of the week I would spend at least 5 hours on Netflix, and I would say that's binge watching.
Okay, good. Fine. Actually, 5 hours of Netflix.
You need to edit that part out. You need to
that is non-motivational. Okay. So 5 hours of Netflix for a CA student just before the exam is definitely very courageous, I must add. And with that, if you got a rank, then wow, kudos to you. So Kushal, what do you think?
So like at least the main study period, right? Being a Gujju, the only thing to look forward to was the food, right? So my study breaks were more towards discussing with mom and looking forward to what the next meal was. And I was a morning person, so say start early in the morning. Then breakfast was a break. And again, do like a good quality, at least 3 hours is a minimum time you need to have one session. Then you have like a lunch break. So say maybe have lunch at 1 or something. Then again start from 2 to 5, 2 to 6. And again, take a break. and watch TV or just chill with mom. So that used to be like a half an hour break, and then again you have, but at least ensure you have those 3 hour sessions.
Correct.
And for final CA, maybe there was a change of location. Earlier, I used to go to the library, so then there were a lot of people around, and I used to go to Goregaon Sports Club. So then, either I could take a walk in the ground or just roam around, see people playing sports, etc. And then you had friends around to chill. But then once closer to studies, obviously, I'm more of a solo study, and group studies just kind of affects. So then I started studying from home, but then TV was my go-to break. Always
Okay.
chilling with mom.
What about you, Nayan?
Things. Food. That used to be my main break point every time.
So food, okay.
Yeah, the other thing that I can recommend right now is you have a lot of these online fitness classes happening, right? And now with the technology where it is, you can really leverage that to your benefit. I remember during our times, we used to have 2G internet. So not really an option that time, but it's really important to keep yourself fit and hydrated all the time. That really helps your energy levels.
Excellent. There is this one small thing that I just want to ask. Just a quick answer, a very rapid answer in relation to this. Were you studying much better during the day or when you started early in the morning, or would you prefer to stretch right up to like, let's say 3 a.m., 4 a.m. maybe? And in relation to that, are you in favor of taking power naps during the day, suppose when you felt lethargic? So just quick answer in relation to that, Nayan.
So I used to be a night person.
Okay.
Sleep cycle was quite affected during exams. Power naps depends on how freaked out you are.
Okay.
So if you have time, why not? But more often than not, that didn't used to be the case. So.
Okay. Kushal?
I was a morning person, and I tried staying up in the night, but it didn't work for me. And like if I'm staying up till like 3 or 4, and I will end up making coffee, say having some whiting, etc., and then start my day at 10, 11. But compared to days where I could just get up at 6 and do quality studies for 4 or 5 hours, that was more productive. So it worked for me morning. And power nap depends. So routine days, yes, you can. And exam days, I used to take for sometimes just to take a break for 10, 15 minutes if I'm stretching late or I'm just really exhausted with the studies. It helps.
Okay. Okay. What about you, Sonia?
So I was completely a night person. I used to study all night and sleep during the day. In terms of power naps, sure, if you can trust yourself that you will wake up in 20 minutes or 30 minutes, do it. I could never do it. So I used to always go and have like a cup of black coffee and not sleep.
Okay. Just keep hitting the treadmill. Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for sharing that. Next question in relation to the sleep only. And this is one of my current CA inter students who had asked this, and that is, how was your sleep cycle during the entire process, and how much importance did you give to sleep and rest as the exam got nearer? So first, Kushal, can you put some light on this?
So at least prior to the exam, definitely you should have adequate sleep for you to be able to survive the whole day and to get that retention. So at least 6 hours is something I feel is minimum, and then maybe 6 to 8 hours depends on the individual. Exam days, yes, the sleep takes a toll, but at least the exam day, you come back, you sleep in the afternoon or that first day properly, nicely. Then maybe the night before the exam depends on how much you want to cover, but still important to sleep well before the exam, because the exam is at 2 in the afternoon. So that's like a long time from being up in the morning, and you can't afford to be lazy or not at your best. So definitely not recommend that stay up whole night and go for the exam.
Okay. What about you, Nayan?
Same things. I think Kushal covered most of it already. Before your exams, actually 6 to 7 hours is something that you should really be doing every day.
Okay.
During exams, the first night you should really recover. The second night is which you may or may not be able to control that much. But the first night after the exam, you should definitely try to recover.
Okay. What about you, Sonia?
So while principally I agree with what these two guys mentioned, for me personally, I was not able to sleep more than max 3 hours before the exam day.
Okay.
And luckily for me, it did not negatively affect my performance the next day, because I was kind of used to it always. I used to study at the last minute, even in school and college, and kind of stay up the night and go and write the exam. But if you're somebody who's trying to do this for the first time, please don't experiment, because what can happen is the next day you might either probably you can even blank out, or you can experience additional anxiety where your hands quiver and all. So unless you're confident that it will not negatively affect you, don't try it.
Correct. True.
And normally on non-exam days, I was able to sleep for about 6-7 hours a day.
Okay. So all of y'all, I think, recommend 6 to 7 hours a day of minimum sleep for keeping the mental freshness. Okay. What is your one advice to cope with exam stress just few hours before the exam? Now, this question was framed keeping in mind the exam of CA students is generally at 2 p.m. So my question is at around, let's say 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. during that phase, when the student is about to going to write the exam, but if the preparation is not done properly or some chapter is just pending. So how do you cope up with that exam stress? So first of all, Kushal.
Honestly, so and maybe it worked for me, my parents, or at least my mom, would come to drop me to the exam center. And if I wanted to talk, they were always there. I really didn't want to meet anyone, bump into anyone, discuss about the exam, sit in my car and just keep reading if I want to, or just, patiently wait to get into the exam hall. And again, I was one of the last ones to enter the exam hall, and everyone just settled, keep my bag, take my, notepad, and, pen, etc. Just start writing for the exam. That's it.
Okay. What about you, Nayan?
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
My question is basically, if the exam is at 2 p.m., which generally CA exams are at that time, my question is just few hours before the exam, if you were nervous or dealing with exam stress, suppose it may be because of under preparation of a particular topic or subject, then how did you cope up with the stress? One advice for the students.
So simple advice is to always remember and keep in mind that this is not the end of the world. And I think that's something which we tend to neglect while we are preparing for these kind of exams. So it's something that you really need to keep in mind. And the other thing that I would really recommend is, no matter what you do in those 3 hours, that will neither positively nor negatively affect whatever you have done before that during your last 6 months or 5 months of study leave. So whatever you do right now really won't make that big a difference. So no need to stress out on that part.
Okay, nice. Excellent. Sonia, what about you?
I think I completely agree with Kushal. I used to follow the same strategy. So my parents used to come and drop me, and I would also, for that 1 or 2 hours when you reach early, I would sit in the car and kind of not enter the exam hall until it was when you were allowed to go up actually. Because just looking at the people revising and galti se we mentioned, ye question important hai, aapne kiya hai kya? And if not done it, so I think it's just good to avoid that. And there was this thing my dad used to tell me always when I used to stress looking at people, in every exam, they're just sitting and revising last minute. And I used to get stressed, like, what are these people reading so much? Like, why are they studying so much? And my dad would tell me, look, why are you stressing? All these people are just competing for the second position. The first is fixed for you.
Wow.
And for whatever that meant, but it kind of just helped get my spirits up and stress less about it.
Excellent.
One thing I'd like to add, and which I used to look forward after the exam was, so I had a calendar, like you have to make proper calendars, right? Which what is, Bhagwan Kya, whatever you get free from shops, etc. So that I used to start, I used to enjoy that my freedom is say 4 months down the line, 5 months. So daily before sleeping, I would cancel out that date from the calendar, and this used to make me feel happy. Hey, my freedom is say 100 days ahead, 90 days. And even the exam, the first thing after coming home, I would come, strike that paper from the calendar, be happy about it, and then do anything else. So that just used to make me really happy. And I
just striking the day off.
Yeah, just striking the day off and the exam on. Hey, that I'm done. 7 papers to go, 6 papers to go.
Excellent. The good thing about that is you had the confidence that this is the last time you're giving it. So that's the best part, which most of the CA students don't know. So that was a good
Back
part.
of the mind is always that you can't touch these books again. You're dead if you do that. So that's
true. That is it.
Keeps you motivated.
My next question to you all is, now this is very important, and this I framed, and I personally took time to just think about it. And can you just elaborate on that one habit or quality of yours that has really contributed for the rank? What one thing you did right or which you have in you that made you unable to get into that rankers list? And this I wanted to ask, because if the students are looking at this and if they want to inculcate that a particular habit, then they can start from the beginning. Maybe that can be discipline, or maybe being punctual, or it can be anything. So Nayan, what do you think?
For answering that, I would like to actually ask one more question to all three of you. In your opinion, what is more difficult, getting a rank in CA or getting a rank in, let's say, a college exam? What are your thoughts? Just a single yes or no, as in which one is more difficult?
I would say CA.
Michelle and Sonia?
CA. Even college, like at least ours, I don't know, NM was not a K-pop, but yeah. So that
And
was
Sonia, what
equally
about you?
difficult.
Sonia, what do you think? He's asking basically, his question, Nayan's question is, he's just thrown a question back at us saying that which exam did you find more difficult to get a rank in, or now do you think in the hindsight would be difficult to get a rank in, either the college exams or the CA exams?
Obviously, the CA exams.
Okay, the answer is pretty clear.
Yeah. So actually, I have a very different opinion on this, and I would actually say that it's college exam that is tougher to crack for a rank. Now, I would also distinguish my answer into two parts here. First is which one is difficult to clear. There, hands down, CA is the more difficult exam to clear. But if you keep aside the clearing part of it, which one is a more difficult exam to get a rank in, then it is a college exam, and I'll tell you why. Let's say in a college exam, the average percentage which a top 5 rankers would get would be north of 90%, which typically means you have to ace every paper that you write. You are effectively saying you get 90 marks in every subject, more or less. Whereas in a CA exam, you need 50 marks, 50% to pass. And the rankers actually end up getting usually somewhere in between 65 to 70%.
Yeah.
So there's not too much of a gap between what rankers get and what a normal person who actually clears CA does.
Correct.
What this also means is you don't need to ace each and every paper to the top of your quality or top of your batch to end up getting a rank in a CA exam. Whereas in a college exam, you need to do that. And that is the mindset which everyone carries, right? That to be a ranker, you need to be out of this world. You need to be someone, the next Bond, James Bond and all that stuff. But what actually is the reality is you can actually be closer to, let's say, an average of 65, 70 marks, and some papers can be good, some papers can be less, and you can still get a rank.
Correct.
That is a belief that you need to have, and that is the biggest quality I think helps you achieving it, is knowing that you can get a rank without acing every paper. That is something which no one really thinks about, but it's really important.
True. Exactly. Kushal, what about you?
So one thing, yes, this generally for CA, be it rank or not, and maybe I fundamentally believe that you don't plan or aim for a rank. You try and give your best, and just with the motivation of not wanting to study again, that should be your driving factor. And yes, in that time prior to the exam, like in your preparation to the exam, you need to have a certain discipline in all your aspects. How you're thinking, you need to give it a lot of importance. That should be the first and foremost thing on your priority in your mind, that clearing the CA exam, and it gives you a lot of happiness once you clear the exam, and it has a lot of value, right? And secondly, now purely speaking from the rank perspective, ultimately your entire effort for all these months, ultimately boils down to how you write the paper, and that what you put on a piece of paper. Maybe you have the knowledge, but you're not able to put it on paper, does not do. And the person who's checking the paper has hundreds of papers to check and assess on. And sadly, or how our education system works, right? And that is, I wanted to actually say it earlier, for theory subjects, etc., right? So they are checking basically the bullet pointers, and that's where we had to remember the keywords, bullet point, to make the life easy of the examiner, the person who's checking a paper. So I had this habit of, highlighting the keywords and ensuring that at the end of every paper, I have 2 minutes at least to mark out the answers or the key points in the answer and make the life easy for the person who's taking it. You should get a happy feel, especially in the first 2-3 pages, to make an impression about the student. So the first problem, how you solve, it's 100% right. He makes up a mind. Acha, ye 60 wala paper hai, ye 70 wala hai, and that kind of goes on. So it's important to get that first impression. Right.
Okay, Sonia, what about you?
I think the main quality that contributed to my rank was that I never stopped believing that I could. So I think if you think you can do it, you most certainly can. That's the key, like having that positive outlook. And I think, of course, it's a given that you need to have strategy in place, you need to have plans in place, you need to religiously follow it and put in hard work and all of that. But I guess most importantly, you need to believe that you actually can achieve it, and never should you engage in a bout of self-doubt where you're actually questioning, like, look, I'm not cut out for this, or I can't do it, because then you'll fail. If forget a rank, you're not even clear if you don't think that you're capable of achieving something.
Okay, nice.
Just one more point I would want to add here.
Yeah.
The other key thing to remember is no matter what, you need to complete your paper. 100 marks has to be attempted, and that really makes a difference if you end up missing something.
Correct. Absolutely true. Completely agree with that. That why to leave marks in the exam and give it free to ICI when, when the marks are cut for a lot of different issues. So why not attempt 100 marks and try to earn as much as possible? Excellent point. Now, one last question. This is an extremely personal and touching question for you, and maybe you can just explain that moment. When you saw the result and when you came to know that you got a rank, what was your reaction and what was your family's reaction? Sonia, what about you?
I was actually on the street and I was trying to check my result for a really long time. It didn't load. And then when it finally loaded, I just saw like pass and pass, and I screamed. And the people around were thinking, what is this crazy girl doing on the street? And then my mom called me, and she had also simultaneously checked the result, and she called me and she's like, look, did you check the result? And I'm like, yeah, mom, I cleared. Like, you didn't just clear, you got a rank.
Yeah.
And then I screamed again, this time much more louder than the last time. And then I guess we both called our dad, we called my dad, and all of us were really happy, and it was like an amazing one-of-a-kind feeling.
Excellent. So Kushal, what about you?
So I was just saying that for my IPCC attempt, right, and I had this one day for the exam, and I just want to say it maybe as a learning for others. So on the exam day, there was this one problem from a chapter which I just missed revising for the exam, and I kind of blanked out because I started cursing myself that on the main exam day, how could you not, do this chapter? And I had just assumed maybe I had done it, and those 15-20 minutes I was really struggling because I was not really able to think straight. But yeah, at least I had the confidence, and once I came back home, my parents said, you've done well in terms of the other sums problems, so you should sail through, don't worry about that, let's focus on the next subject. And that is what I did. And when the final results came in, so for that subject also, whatever I'd done was fairly correct. So I had 65 or 70. But yeah, the main idea when I saw the results was just to see pass. And that was like the main thing. And then I think my dad exclaimed, marks to Joe, just see the marks. And that's when I think we clicked on check merit together. And then it was just fantastic. I mean, no words to describe that feeling to see a rank. It was just way too great an experience. And then, seeing it in your parents' eyes, the joy, the happiness.
Excellent. What about you, Nayan?
I'll just break it down and be slightly more elaborate on this. My sister had a rank in CPT.
Okay. Family pressure.
Yeah, I missed it by a few marks, right? And obviously she was 3 years older to me, so she had already given an exam that I was giving much earlier than me. And she always used to say, oh my God, CPT was so much easier than the rest two levels. And that pressure always was built in. And I used to think that, I missed in CPT, which used to be much easier. Now my chance is gone.
Yeah.
And what happened in IPCC was we were the first batch to actually give IPCC. Earlier it used to be the PCC days.
Correct.
So it was a new format, a new subject introduced as well, and we were the first guinea pigs of sorts. So It was really tense, and obviously no one really thought that they were getting a rank. To add on to it, our results were delayed by around 10 to 12 hours maybe.
Correct.
So by the time the results actually came, by waiting for it, I had dozed off.
Correct.
So, and just think of it this way, that I was sleeping and I get a dream that Nayan, you got a rank in IPCC. And I was like,
Wow.
wow, how great would it be, right? If this turns true, right? And I was like, wow, great, and all that. And then I somehow felt that someone is shaking, and I had my dad on my phone, and he had checked my result, and he was telling me that you have got a rank. So imagine that was a dream come true in a literal sense. I just woke up and I started jumping. I didn't know what else to do. Imagine the pressure that you feel that you may or may not pass, and that's when you really come to know of the great news. So that was IPCC. And what happened is finals was quite different to that. So obviously once you get an IPCC, you would aim to get one in final as well. And I gave in everything for that. The only issue that happened is at the time of ISTA paper, because of the 5 papers before that, I actually burned out, and I literally went blank in my paper. I could not study well. I literally could not answer any question properly, and I was super tense that I am going to fail it. In fact, after my exam, I actually came out and started counting each and every question that, okay, this question out of 5, I may get 2 or 3 marks. This I've written so much, I can get 3 or 4. I was barely making the cut at that time, and I was literally shattered that time. You know, it happens when you put in so much effort and you feel that it might go waste.
Correct.
So obviously there was a lot of pressure, and no one used to believe me, right? Everyone used to say that, oh, you will get a rank, blah, blah, blah. There was a lot of pressure when the results were actually coming out. I was actually scared that I will not pass ISTA. Thankfully, again, this time I did not. I usually never check my results on my own. So I had asked my friend to check it for me, and he checked it and he told me that you have cleared. I was so relieved at that point, and then I asked him, okay, can you just check if I happen to get one? And he checked, and thankfully I had got. So it was more of a relief this time than
that's 10 time celebrations.
Yeah.
Excellent. I would like to thank you all that you guys took time out. I understand there is lockdown, but still I really know that everybody is busy. So thanks for taking time out for the students, and just to put in your thoughts. I think this is the first time any such kind of format is attempted on YouTube where CA students are discussing via podcast. So thanks for participating in this, and I would like to thank you and wish you well for your future endeavors. So thank you once again.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Yes, take care. Bye bye. Good night.
Bye.